Okay.
No, you can't move that one.
You can't move them, so. Okay. Anyway, okay. Well, welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. Please note that the meeting is being broadcast and recorded. For clarity, voting is only permitted by the members who are present in the room. I think that's everyone today. Any member joining the meeting remotely is able to participate in the debate but not able to vote. Other than that, the usual rules apply. Are there any apologies?
Yes, I've received apologies from Councillor Badibo.
Thank you very much. I can see the members of the committee who are in attendance and their names will be recorded in the minutes. I do not believe there is anyone attending online.
No, no one has joined remotely.
Okay, thank you. The full text for declarations of interest is set out on the agenda. If any member has a disclosable pecuniary interest or an affected interest to declare, please indicate and I will come to you in turn. There are no indications, so there are no declarations, but may I remind everyone that you can make a declaration at any time should it occur to you at a later point. Anyone declaring a disclosable pecuniary interest will need to leave the meeting when we get to the relevant item. Agenda item 3, to approve the minutes of the Governance and Audit Committee held on the 20th of July 2022. Are there any comments? Okay, are we okay to approve those minutes? Okay, all agreed. Thank you very much. Are there any urgent items?
No, none notified, Chair.
Thank you. In that case, I'll move on to agenda item 5 to Sally to receive the strategic risk update.
Thank you, Chair. This is the risk update we bring a couple of times a year to the Audit Committee, and it includes the latest update of the Strategic Risk Register. The Strategic Risk Register is reviewed by the Strategic Risk Management Group once every quarter and then goes on to the Corporate Management Team. So the Strategic Risk Management Group reviewed this in August and then it went on to CMT in September. And from that, there were a couple of key changes that came out of that. First of all, it was agreed that we should be increasing the finance risk because of the issues around inflationary pressures and so on. And secondly, we have now added an additional risk into the risk register, which is around refugees, and that's refugees coming in from various points around the world, not just from Ukraine. So those risks have been added in now. The risk register is reviewed, as I said, on a quarterly basis, so it will be going back again to Strategic Risk Management Group in just about 3 weeks' time. So we may well make further changes at that point. But the register comes to the Audit Committee for your input and for me to take back any comments or feedback that you want me to feed back to the corporate management team who own this risk register in effect. So I'm happy to take any questions that.
Are there any questions on the risk register? Peter.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Chair. It's something I meant to check out myself and didn't get round to it. On the table on Appendix 1, which is page 9, have any of those risks actually moved in the last 3 months? Because I know obviously number 13 is a new one. It says it's new, but particularly the reds, have they moved into any of the other boxes, or have they always been as they are this quarter?
Yes, the finance and economic risk has increased. What I try to do is within this table, you'll see, if you can see, it's probably quite hard to see, but in the finance and economic risk, which is over to the far top right hand corner, you'll see there's an upward arrow. So what I try to do is actually show by that what the movement is.
So, I beg your pardon, so I can see it. Thanks, Sally.
Yeah.
Just a comment, but wasn't it red already?
It was already red, but
and it was in that sector, wasn't it?
I think it was 4x4 before.
Oh, it was 4x4 and now it's 5x4. Okay, got it, thank you.
Yeah, so it's increased.
Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. that one, that finance and economic, does that include contractual matters?
Yes, it would include the whole impact of financial issues.
Thank you.
Michael.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Sally. Very comprehensive and very detailed, and I have to say it reads very well. It's even though it needs to be enlarged, I found when I was upstairs in the group office looking at it on what looked like about a 32-inch screen, it became much clearer.
Yeah.
I have to say. My question is actually on page 18 to do with data protection risk. We are aware, for instance, of cyber attacks, and the National Health Service were attacked recently, and their system came down. Is this, we obviously do have to look at the risk factor. Is this something that's insurable, can I ask, in terms of any threat that is made to us in terms of releasing the information back to us? Or is this something that we work through IT on trying to resolve? If that was to arise, what is the risk effectively, and how can we mitigate it?
In terms of cyber risk cover, we did actually explore that about 18 months ago at the council. We completed a very comprehensive exercise within ICT to identify what all our controls were and so on, and submitted it and put it through brokers to try and purchase cyber cover. But unfortunately we were unable to get cover, and that's due to the general, that's nothing to do with the council, that is just a national problem with insurers being very cautious about risk in that area, because they have been caught out in a number of areas, and there's also been quite a number of high profile cyber risk attacks at local authorities, and because of that it's made them very nervous in the market. So initially I think they did tentatively come forward with a proposal, but then they sort of withdrew it in the end. It's incredibly difficult to get cover at the moment, and that's why our brokers were advising that we go down a slightly different route and develop a different approach to mitigation. So instead of being able to buy insurance cover, what we're doing is, as a council, we are going out and we are working with organisations that can help us with the response in the event of an incident, and setting up call-off contracts, I suppose, in effect, to be able to put those in place so that they can help us to respond to any incident, because there are many factors to any incident that you have from that. There's all sorts of different things that need to be considered. So you do need, generally, as an organisation, assistance on those if you get into that situation, if you're in that unfortunate position. But hopefully, I mean, our controls are very tight. Within our ICT, they work very hard to try and mitigate and prevent anything happening.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think that provides the necessary reassurance. Can I have another question? Sally, just one. On page 38, which is the client questionnaire and those who've rated us as satisfactory, why are the numbers so different between on page 38 between 21/22 and 20 and 22 up to date, where it's gone from 19 to 2?
That's on the next item.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
We can cover it under the next
sorry,
item.
yes,
Should we
the Chairman's right. Yes.
It's on the next item, sorry. Peter.
It's an observation, but can you confirm something I'd speak to ICT on a regular basis? We actually are under some form of attack on a daily basis, aren't we? And touch wood, our mitigation's always been successful in staving it off. And every authority is the same, isn't it? There's a daily attack on them.
Yes.
It's something which is ongoing, isn't it?
Every organisation.
Mm.
Sorry, it would be every organisation. You know, the public sector is probably particularly prone to attack, and it is nationwide, and our ICT team do a very good job in trying to actually mitigate against that and prevent anything getting through.
I don't think there are any more questions, but interesting recommendation. It says the Governance and Audit Committee are to provide feedback for CMT on the strategic risk register attached. I'm not sure, well, I mean, we made some comments on it, but I think there's not a really recommendation there. It's just really noted, isn't it? So we will note that. Thank you very much. Sorry, Ian.
If I could comment, Chairman, in view of what has been said, I think we ought to ask them to note that the financial and economic risk appears to have increased.
Yeah.
Which is fairly important.
Okay, we shall do that in that case.
Is that, sorry, can I just clarify, are you saying over and above this, or are you saying it's further increased?
The report notes it's increased.
Yes.
I mean, it might well have done, but I don't know.
In doing that, can you also add that it's not just what's been going on in Ukraine and post-COVID, but it's also, well, there's inflation, but also government funding is still very much difficult to plan. And that's one of the reasons why the risk has gone up so much.
Yeah. And there are also other pressures on our services, you know, in some areas where the costs are very high and rising, for example, in children's placements and so on, and the costs are increasing all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I will consider that fed back then. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the internal audit update. Again, over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the update I bring to you about once a quarter, every time we come really to the Governance and Audit Committee. So this latest report covers the progress that we've made between April and the end of September. And just to draw your attention to a few things really, I just did want to note, you know, that we have had considerable pressure on our resources, and we have had a considerable amount of audits brought forward, and that's sort of really still bringing forward backlogs from COVID, when we couldn't get in to do certain audits, in particular around, say, for example, schools. So we are playing catch up all the time, and we are trying very hard to address that. But we have been under resource pressures, and there's also been some other factors this year which have added to that. So at one point, one of our external providers reduced the amount of days they were able to offer us, so that sort of didn't help for a while. But we also had the children's inspection, which meant the audits that we were due to carry out in the first quarter, we pushed back, and then we struggled to find things we could bring forward. So we were in a little bit of a difficulty there. So we are trying to work hard to catch up on that. And we are also trying to build up our resources. So today we interviewed for an audit apprentice to assist us as a trainee, and we'll see how that goes. We're still in the sort of interview and process and considering those at the moment. But that's the sort of steps we're trying to take to try and build up our resources to make sure we can catch up and clear the backlog here. So that's one of the factors I just wanted to draw your attention to. One of the other points I wanted to draw your attention to was about some of the issues we've had in the past with actions not being implemented, which was leading to repeat adverse assurance opinions. And where we're trying to deal with that at the council, we've decided it would be important and helpful to introduce a recommendation tracker. So we have had to set up a sort of database of all the recommendations which we will be asking management in the DMTs and so on to try and maintain and update, so that it keeps those audits up on the radar to make sure that those actions are addressed moving forward, and we can become more efficient and effective, and more and increase the likelihood that all those actions that they've agreed to do, they actually are able to proceed with them and complete them. And then that should hopefully then reduce the number of repeat partial opinions and so on, because they'll be implementing the actions that they had committed themselves to undertaking. So hopefully that will be a good move. It's been a very big piece of work for us to do to try and populate that, because we've gone back to 2019-20, which is an awful lot of audits, because we do a lot of audits here, and a lot of audit recommendations, but we're making good progress on that. So next, I wanted to draw your attention to section 3.6, which sets out the audits, which is on page 36, which sets out where we are with the audits and the outcomes to date on those audits that have been issued, and also shows the number of grants that we've certified. And then below that, we then have just the summary of those areas where we have identified some high priority recommendations for management to take forward. And there are a good couple of these where the management teams had already identified that there were potential issues, and they had actually asked us to do the work, for example, around the send area, where the assistant director had asked us to carry that out. And the permanency planning is another one where that initially was requested. Those initial audits were requested because the assistant director wanted us to have a look at it, because she thought there were perhaps potential areas there, and she wanted to check that out. So that's another area really where we're just following up on areas which management had already they were already aware that they thought there might be a problem, and they just wanted some independent assurance just to confirm their understanding. So I wasn't going to go through any more of this in any detail, but I'm very happy to take any questions that that the committee has.
I'll just kick off by saying thank you for implementing the colour coding on the on the audits, which has helped. I understand from Sally and that apparently it was CMT that asked not to have it in there, but we've now put it back in, which is I think very helpful. Just a question from me. Given that we're 6 months through the year, the number of audits thus far complete seems quite low. Is there a concern there?
I am at the moment going back to the directorates to try and clarify what audits they really need for this year and which ones we might have to defer. But I'm not overly concerned now, because I do feel like we're turning a corner on this, where I was getting a little bit concerned, say, about 2 months ago. But we are making better progress now, and the external provider that had reduced the number of days that they were going to provide for us has actually come back and said they can do another 25 days for us in Q4, which is very, very helpful. So so I'm feeling much more positive about that now.
Peter.
Thanks, Chair. On that last item, in one of the conversations with Stuart, I asked him about those figures. He also said that the figures, the completed audits tend to be back-ended, don't they? Because there's a lot of work in progress, which over the next 6 months will close. So it's actually not a very good comparison, number of audits last year versus where we are today, because it looks as though you're way behind. But it's probably, in terms of this time last year, it will show you a different picture.
Yeah,
That's what I was told.
Yeah, I think he's probably right. Actually, you do for the first. It's always an issue with audit. You usually find that for the first quarter you don't really get an awful lot done. You're probably just trying to finalise things from the previous year and so on, and get things up and running for the current year. So it never runs month by month in a proportionate way.
Yeah.
And we have got a lot of audits that are actually in progress, as I think I've reflected up here actually in there's probably some detail there which actually shows the number that we'd got ongoing.
It's almost worth having a memorandum comparison column of this time last year.
Yes, you're probably right. I was thinking that actually we can probably do that, so we can give you comparable figures so you can see whether we're better or worse. But yes, we had got 7 audits in progress at the time when we produced this, so there is a lot.
Put in brackets or something, a little bracketed number after it, say what last year's number was or something. That might be useful.
Chair, one final question, if I may.
Peter.
There's a bit of hiatus amongst the external auditors at the moment, isn't it? Does that impact your function at all, or does it put pressure on your function?
Not at all. We have very little engagement with the external auditors, and one of the reasons for that is the auditing standards basically used to allow them years ago to place a lot of reliance on the work of internal auditors, and probably about 10 years ago that all changed. So they don't really place an awful lot of reliance on the work that we do. And so the work that we do helps them, I suppose, to inform their planning process. They are always about a year behind us anyway, even when they don't have the sorts of issues that they've got at the moment around the audits. Just generally they are. We're working in the current year, they're looking back at the previous year. So we're always out of line. And clearly, we have to do our own work anyway because I have to give my opinion on the control environment. But I do try and meet with them on a regular basis to catch up with them and see if there's anything they need from us. They get copies of all our reports, but we don't get anything really back from them in the other direction. So because they are a year behind us, so the fact they're changing doesn't really have any impact on us at the moment.
Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on page 39, benefits. Just a point of clarification, please. This ability for the council to impose civil penalties for overpaid housing benefit, etc. I'm assuming, Sally, that if this ability is exercised, it's done after a proper investigation, and we're not just imposing it because a genuine error has been made by somebody, which could either be, of course, the applicant or the council. I mean, we haven't been unknown to make errors in this area.
No, everybody makes errors,
Yes.
I suppose, and mistakes.
But I'm assuming that this is meant to apply
Yeah.
if somebody is making a known, deliberate, fraudulent claim. At
Yes,
some
or
point.
if they've been negligent in it, and they're obviously when the team are reviewing this, because this is done by the welfare area, not by audit, but when they're looking at this, they do take these factors into consideration and try and make sure that they're being reasonable at what can be expected. But this is just genuinely when they are become aware that people have not really done what they should have done to let us know when they've got a change in circumstances.
And can I ask, who is responsible for taking the action to impose a penalty?
That would be around the welfare team. So they would be adding the penalty to any overpayment or whatever that has arisen. So they would add that, and that would be part of the process of recovering any overpayments.
I understand, and I assumed it would be somebody within the welfare team, but I'm assuming it would be a senior officer of some description. I'm actually trying to find out at what level of authority that decision would be made, but perhaps I should direct my question to the welfare people.
It might be best as
Yes,
to
thank you.
where they take
That's
it
fine,
from.
thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Brossard.
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, following on from Councillor Leake's comment, it also appears that there have been some cases that there's been an underpayment. Is that correct? If I read that correctly, that there have been some cases that, looking at it, it appears that they've not actually claimed the correct amount.
Yes, there's various means by which they get information now about what potential changes might have been to individual circumstances. And that sort of work that's done by DWP, and then DWP will flag that to the council, because sometimes people are not telling us about things which in actual fact would mean that they would be entitled to more. So that's the same thing, and then that is treated in exactly the same way. The adjustment is made to actually correct it accordingly.
Yes, it secures an equitable outcome.
Yes.
Chairman, if I can, a supplementary on page 38, Sally. It's very pleasing that there's 100% satisfaction in terms of client questionnaires, albeit only on 2 returns. Is it very difficult to get people to actually fill in the questionnaire and
Yes.
yet we achieved 19 the month do we actually follow up where we ask them to fill in the questionnaire and they don't respond? Do we try and get them to respond? Because I think it's a measure of the success of the department that people provide positive feedback. That's what we all aspire to.
It certainly is, and that's what we want. I think what I would say, if to be open about this, is that because of the resource pressures we've had, pursuing these probably hasn't been a priority for us at the moment, because we've been focusing on setting up the recommendation tracker, and that's taken up a lot of our time. Plus, we've been going through the recruitment process for the apprentice, so it probably has slipped out off our radar a bit, but it is something that we're aware of. And actually, years ago, I do remember we basically made it very clear, and I can do that. I can go back to DMTs and just point out that the Governance and Audit Committee is saying that it's mandatory to complete these, because that's what we used to say in the past, because it would help me, but also it would help you to be able to assess if we are performing as officers expect us to, and providing the level of service that they're looking for. We can do that if.
Are there any further questions? Peter.
I was looking through the tables, and presumably you've had extra responsibility in terms of auditing all the grants that we've had to pay out. Is that under the finance bit, under business rates and council tax? Because that must have been quite a heavy, because of the potential for fraud there.
Yes, I think those have generally fallen within previous years, and it did actually add quite a lot of pressure during 21-22, when we had to do an awful lot of work around the grants that the revenues team were distributing.
So would that be in the, where did I see it, under the resources section?
It would be reported in the previous year, so it would be reflected more in my annual opinion for last year, because we haven't done work on that this year. I think there's been a couple of things where we have done things, but it's not been too onerous this year, but certainly was in the last year was very onerous trying to pick up that work. Oh, actually, we did do one thing. We did do track and trace, and that's coming through, and that's reported under. Trying to think where that would be reported. That is reported under the governance section, so it's page 43. So you'll see test and trace support payments.
Right, I'm looking at the wrong place. Thank
you. So anything to do with grants, I usually show under governance. But we have done a bit this year, but the bulk of the work was actually last year. That was very onerous.
Oh, that's right. On page 42, grant certification.
Yeah.
It says business COVID support grants. Management advised that no audit assurance required.
They did not. The Section 151 officer said he didn't actually think that we needed to have assurance on that for this particular year. Right. But we did do the test and trace, and we did a lot of work last year on the work that the team was doing to actually control the payments to the teams. To the applicants.
Any further comments or questions? In that case, that item's just been noted, so we shall move on then to agenda item 7, is it? Which is to receive the Code of Conduct update. Sanjay.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief. This item relates to some cursory amendments to our existing Code of Conduct. The existing code has been in place since 2012, following the introduction of the Localism Act. The reason why it was suggested we should review the code was predicated on a report produced in January 2019 by the Committee for Standards in Public Life. the Committee for Standards in Public Life reviewed the standards regime and its operation across the country and made a number of recommendations, partly to government and partly to local authorities. One of those recommendations was for the LGA to create or introduce a model code of conduct to try to harmonise the process of standards across the country. Accordingly, in December 2020, the LGA produced a model code and invited local authorities to consider whether or not they wanted to adopt that model code or not in whole or in part or not at all. The council then, Bracknell Forest Council, we set up a Code of Conduct working group which convened in January 2022. It met in January 2022. The group, the Code of Conduct working group, were asked to give a view on the current Code of Conduct and whether it was fit for purpose, and also give views on the model code. Overall, the group was confident in the council's existing code. The Bracknell Forest Code was deemed to be pretty robust. There were some extracts in the new guidance which associated the model code that could be included, but by and large, the general view was that the existing code could be beefed up rather than adopting the model code. After that meeting, views were invited from members, and it was then that a further meeting took place between myself as the monitoring officer, the assistant director of democratic services, and the chair of that committee, and it was agreed that the changes to be made should be cursory. And the three changes that are being made are one that to reflect the model code, the Bracknell Forest Code should be changed so that it reads in the first person. So rather than a councillor will treat others with respect, it now states I will treat others with respect. So it gives a possessory title, if you like, to the requirements within the obligations, and that's included all the way through the code. The second item was that there should be reference to the new Mayor's Charter, and that's been introduced as well within the document. I think that was universally agreed. And the third item was there should be reference to guidance, because in addition to the code, the model code that the LGA produced, they also produced quite thorough guidance. There was a discussion about whether we should incorporate the guidance within the code, but the risk was to make the document too unwieldy, and therefore what I've done is included the guidance as a link to the existing code, so members can have a look at that. And the guidance is very helpful. It does expand on certain items such as the definition of respect. It refers to social media. It refers to what acting in official capacity means. So it gives a lot of explanatory information in terms of sort of filling the gaps, if you like, in terms of the gaps and the nuances of the code. So essentially very much a cursory set of amendments to the code. The substance of the code remains unchanged. The obligations remain unchanged. We continue with the existing regime of disclosable pecuniary interest as we would be required to by law, and we've retained the affected interest regime as well. So none of that has changed. So it's very much just consequential changes, just in terms of a tidy up. That's all I wanted to say on the matter, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
So I was just looking at the track changes version, and then you said you'd rewritten it all in the first person. So basically every paragraph has changed. So trying to work out what has changed, what the minor changes were, was actually quite difficult.
Apologies for that. I also understand that some of the track changes didn't come through. So I know Hannah has emailed a further version, so that should make it clear. So there are two versions. A clean version, which I appreciate wouldn't have meant very much in itself, but the tracked version, as you said, was one where all the amendments were there for clarification.
But unfortunately it means that every paragraph has changed to first person, therefore you can't actually tell what the changes is. Because all I'm seeing on this track change version is a paragraph marker on the side in red.
Ah, okay.
Not what the change is.
That shouldn't be the case, actually. That there should be the actual tracking should also be appearing.
That's the one she just sent out, isn't it? Yeah. Are there any questions on the code of conduct? Ian?
Just as a matter of interest, and it's a fairly minor point, it's interest more than anything else. I noticed that the £25 value has gone up to 50. When did it go up to 50?
I think if I recall correctly, that would have been either discussed at the meeting itself. Or the
Oh,
working
right. So
group.
this is an amendment. This is
So
a
that
change.
would. I'm trying to recall. It's a while since
It
we had
used
the
to be
meeting.
£25, and it's now gone up to 50.
Yeah,
I'm
it was
just
either at the
interested when.
meeting or subsequently in discussions with the chair. I'm trying and the chair being Councillor Birch. I'm just trying to remember.
Right.
Ah,
What me?
the price of lunches has obviously gone up.
I have to say, I mean, I know that over the years there were various attempts to increase it, and it had always been turned down and put back to 25. So I'm actually quite surprised it has increased. Are we happy with the increase?
No, I'm not actually.
In that case, can we put it back to 25?
I mean, that's why
I'm-
I'm raising the question, because £25 is a sum of money that you might get employed with it.
This is the LGA.
Yeah, okay.
That's
Well,
the
but-
LGA saying.
Well, yeah, but
£50.
the working party said they didn't necessarily want to follow the LGA code. I think 50 quid is pushing it a bit, personally.
So where are you saying 50 quid? Because I'm looking at the track.
Yeah.
I'm on page, it is on page 8 of 16 and 76 of the pack,
Okay, because I'm looking at the track changes version. It says
And it's-
25.
and it's 10.2.
That's the LGA report.
Okay.
That's the LGA version. Sorry, I think that's.
So am I looking at the wrong page?
Yeah, you're looking at the LGA's.
Oh, right.
We're not implementing the LGA's version. We're implementing
Well,
our own
I
version.
can't find it on I'm obviously looking at the wrong.
Section 11 of ours says gifts or hospitality to the value which exceeds £25.
Could you tell me what page that is on, please?
Let me. I'm looking at.
91.
I'm looking.
What?
91.
91.
I think.
Hang on.
Registration gifts and hospitality, yes. 91.
Fine. Okay. Yep. I'm happy. Yeah.
Right. So we're sticking at £25 because basically the LGA have recommended 50, but we're sticking with 25. Are you happy with that?
Yes. Yes.
Are there any further questions on the code of conduct? In which case, I shall go and find the recommendation somewhere. It's a long way back. Okay, the recommendation is the Council approves the changes to the Council Code of Conduct as set out in Appendix C of the report and agree to the Constitution being amended accordingly. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bob.
Sorry, I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I think that concludes our agenda for this evening. Can we come off live, please?